cuts of about $20 billion in our current level of spending, enough to be meaningful with 7 months remaining in our calendar year or our fiscal year, but not enough to undermine the recovery. It's simple, it's serious, and it's real. I urge its adoption. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman from Kentucky continue to reserve his point of order?
Madam Chairman, I make a point of order against the amendment because it proposes to change existing law and constitutes legislation in an appropriations bill and therefore violates Clause 2 of Rule 21, which states in pertinent part, an amendment to a general appropriations bill shall not be in order if changing existing law. The amendment attempts to create a legislative formula for spending. I ask for a ruling.
Does any member wish to be recognized to speak to the point of order? If not, the chair is prepared to rule. The chair finds that this amendment seeks to establish a legislative formula for funding. The amendment therefore constitutes legislation in violation of Clause 2 of Rule 21. The point of order is sustained, and the amendment is not in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin rise?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk, number 89.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 89, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Kind of Wisconsin.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Kind, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Gentleman's recognized.
I yield myself such time. Madam Chair, my amendment is very simple and straightforward. It would save the American taxpayers $150 million a year by ending a new American taxpayer subsidy that is going through Brazilian cotton agribusiness. If this program sounds crazy, it's because it is. But it's also the truth. And how did we get to this point? Well, Brazil had a successful WTO challenge against our own cotton subsidy program under our own farm bill. They prevailed. And you'd think that the logical, reasonable response from us would be to reform our cotton subsidy program. But that's not what happened. Instead, a new program has been created to the tune of $150 million to buy off Brazil cotton agribusiness so they don't provide economic sanctions against our country. It is foolish, it's wasteful, it speaks to the need for us to get into serious farm bill reform, especially under Title I commodity subsidy programs. We need to eliminate this and then get into the tough lifting of comprehensive farm bill reform. I ask my colleagues to support the amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Wisconsin reserves the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
I rise in opposition to the Kind amendment and yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. In 2004, the WTO, the World Trade Organization, found the United States guilty of illegal subsidies to American cotton farmers. It's been a long process, but Brazil is a very important ally of ours. We get along fine. They're very important to us strategically in our own hemisphere, so we want to get along with Brazil. And because of that, we worked out this settlement which kept Brazil from putting retaliatory tariffs on us. That saved us money. If we did not agree to this, which Mr. Kind has pointed out, $147 million, we would have to pay $829 million. This is less, and it only is in effect until the Farm Bill is passed. And the 2012 Farm Bill will deal with that. And with that, I yield a minute and a half to the chairman of the Agriculture Committee, Mr. Lucas.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for a minute and a half.
I rise in opposition to this amendment. This transfer of funds was established as a part of an agreement negotiated between the U.S. and Brazilian governments. As a result of this agreement negotiated by the USTR and USDA, Brazil agreed to suspend retaliation against U.S. exports. If this amendment passes and the funds are not transferred in accordance with the agreement, then the U.S. will be in violation of the agreement. Brazil would then have the right to immediately impose punitive tariffs on U.S. exports. What Mr. Kind's amendment does is invite a trade war. The U.S.-Brazil agreement is in place only until the 2012 Farm Bill is completed. This provides an opportunity for the U.S. to determine what adjustments to current law are necessary as a part of the next Farm Bill to bring the U.S. cotton program into compliance with the WTO ruling. This amendment should not be on this bill. It is a policy change. Please join me in defeating this amendment. And yield back the balance of my time to
Gentleman yields back.
Kingston.
The gentleman from Wisconsin.
I respect my colleague's position. The answer is not to create a new $150 million American subsidy program going to Brazil. The answer is to reform our programs now in the United States. And with that, I yield in a minute to my good friend from Massachusetts, Mr. Frank.
Gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Chair, I think if we were to have a contest on your U-cut for the single stupidest thing the federal government could do, it would be to take $120 million more of American tax dollars and send it to subsidize Brazilian cotton farmers so we can continue to subsidize American cotton farmers. That's what we're talking about. I find it somewhat ironic that my friends who are the great believers in free enterprise and the free market think somehow there's an exception for agriculture. But whether you do or you don't, sending money to Brazilian cotton farmers at a time when we are making fundamental cuts here is problematic. It also illustrates my problem with the structure of this bill. I was hard-pressed to find offsets so we could continue to fund enforcement of securities fraud or consumer protection. Where could we have gotten the money? Well, we could have gotten it from Brazil. Instead of sending it to Brazilian cotton farmers, we could have used it for our own law enforcement. But the bill is structured to protect this. At least we cannot waste it. So let's be very clear. To protect our right to continue to subsidize American cotton farmers, we're going to subsidize Brazilian cotton farmers. Lunacy.
Gentleman from Georgia.
Continue to reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Madam Chair, at this time, I'd like to yield a minute to my friend from Arizona, Mr. Flake.
Gentleman from Arizona is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I hope that nobody in this chamber or watching here misses the irony of this, that we are spending money to subsidize Brazilian agriculture so that we can continue to subsidize agriculture here. That's just incredible when you think about it. And what this amendment will do is to force us back to the table. It won't spark a trade war. It will simply say, all right, stop subsidizing your own agriculture in a way that violates your trade agreements. That's what we want to do, is force the issue where we can actually get out of these subsidy programs. We cannot continue to send money to Brazil so that we can continue to subsidize agriculture here. It just makes no sense at all. This is a great amendment. I hope that my colleagues will support it. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Georgia.
Madam Chair, how much time do I have remaining?
Gentleman from Georgia has 3 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Wisconsin has 1 3/4 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Georgia.
Madam Chair, I yield myself 10 seconds. I just want to point out that I understand and hear what the folks are saying, but we are in a situation where we have an existing farm bill. If we do not do this, it's going to cost American taxpayers $682 million. That was the WTO agreement. With that, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, the ranking member of the Ag Subcommittee on Appropriations, Mr. Farr. 1 minute.
From California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I think that this is a problem. And I think Mr. Kind has a way of looking at trying to remove the money, but it's not going to make the problem go away. I agree that this is a thing that needs to be addressed because there's going to be retaliatory implications if this money is just pulled, and those retaliatory implications are unknown to an awful lot of other agriculture who may even support this amendment. So it's an idea that we need to address. This is not the place to address it. I oppose the amendment.
Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, the answer is not to invite a trade war. The answer is to fix our problem here in America by reforming the long overdue cotton subsidy program. With that, I yield a minute to my friend from Oregon, Mr. DeFazio.
Gentleman from Oregon is recognized for 1 minute.
We've got everything but murder going on here. We're being blackmailed by the government of Brazil, and so we are giving precious U.S. taxpayer dollars, $147 million, to Brazil for their cotton farmers, while I got small farmers going broke. Now, come on. And then we hear from the gentleman from Georgia, well, that's what the law says. Hey, you just repealed health care. You can change the farm bill. We can do away with these obscene subsidies. $3.4 billion built from U.S. taxpayers going to subsidize cotton farmers who use subsidized water on top of that, whose total crop value was $4 billion. So $3.4 billion of it our taxpayer subsidy. This is indefensible. Take this step now, and then next week you can repeal the Farm Bill and replace that.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Georgia.
Madam Chairman, I would remind the gentleman from Oregon we are going to reauthorize the Farm Bill next year, which is what this is all about. I yield a minute and a half to the gentleman from Texas.
Gentleman from Texas recognized for a minute and a half.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also rise in opposition to this amendment. While far from perfect, this agreement was arranged by the Obama administration and the country of Brazil. This will incite a retaliatory trade war against the United States intellectual properties. It won't have anything to do with tariffs on U.S. agriculture, but it will hurt other segments of our economies. The 2008 Farm Bill was a contract with American farmers. They have put business processes in place based on that 5-year contract. We will renew and renegotiate that contract in 2012. It makes no sense to unwind this on a piecemeal basis right now. This is a smokescreen by the other side who wants to go after the Farm Bill. He has done, Mr. Speaker, they've gone after it time and time again. But the contract with American farmers, which allows Americans to enjoy the cheapest, most affordable, most abundant, and safest food and fiber supply in the world, is on the backs of this Farm Bill. Reopening it now on a ad hoc, piecemeal basis is wrong policy of this country. Voting for this is a vote to institute a trade war with Brazil, no matter what the rhetoric is of the other side. Oppose this amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Wisconsin.
Madam Chair, may I inquire the balance of the time?
Gentleman from Wisconsin has 30 seconds remaining. Gentleman from Georgia has 1 minute.
I think the gentleman has right to close. Is that correct? I think he's opposing, so.
Gentleman from Georgia has the right to close. Gentleman from Wisconsin.
I'm prepared to close.
Gentleman recognized.
Chair, what's really ironic in this debate is that cotton prices are at an all-time high in the marketplace. And yet it shows the built-up resistance in this institution to get to the hard work of reforming these farm subsidy programs, which is long overdue. They claim they're going to do it in the next Farm Bill, but there's no assurance when that's going to come up. It could be 3 years from now. That could be an additional $500 million to the American taxpayer with these subsidies flowing to Brazil. The answer is to do it now, rather than waiting next year or 3 years from now, or maybe never at all. I've been around here long enough to know the powerful special interests that resist farm reform. We should do it and save taxpayer dollars at the same time. I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Georgia.
Madam Chair, I yield the remaining balance of our time to the gentleman from Texas, the chairman of the Trade Subcommittee, who will explain why this saves $682 million and complies with WTO law.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am sympathetic to this amendment. The United States should live up to its WTO obligations, particularly if we expect other countries to do the same. Paying Brazil about $12 million a month rather than complying with the WTO decision regarding cotton subsidies isn't the best way to resolve this dispute. I acknowledge that. But this settlement is necessary to prevent Brazil from imposing almost $1 billion in retaliation against American goods and services as it's entitled to do. This retaliation could take many dangerous and costly forms, including high tariffs on our American sales abroad and allowing Brazil to no longer protect American intellectual property rights. Such retaliation would be devastating. It would cost U.S. jobs and harm thousands of innocent workers who have nothing to do with this case. As a result, I must oppose this amendment and urge its defeat. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. All time has expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Wisconsin. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Madam Chair, with that, I request a recorded vote.
Gentleman requests a recorded vote. And pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Wisconsin will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Wisconsin rise?
Madam Chair, I have an amendment at the desk, number 88.
Clerk will designate.
Amendment number 88, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Kind of Wisconsin.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Kind and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes, and the chair recognizes the gentleman from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Gentleman's recognized.
I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Recognized.
Madam Chair, my amendment is pretty straightforward and simple. It would eliminate 2 weapons programs that the Defense Department, the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, the bipartisan fiscal commissions say are not necessary, they are not needed, they don't go to improve military readiness, and they are redundant. It's the Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle, as well as the Surface-Launched Medium-Range Air-to-Air Missile System, the SLAM-RAM for short. Now, I'm not going to get into the details as to why these weapons programs should be defunded. Those serving on the committee have heard these arguments for years. But what I want to make is a larger point here today, that if we're going to be serious about true deficit reduction, the defense aspect of the federal budget also has to be on the table. And what better place to start than by listening to our own military leaders who continually tell this Congress, stop appropriating money for weapon systems we don't want, that we don't want to use, that aren't necessary. They don't enhance military readiness, and they're not going to support our troops in the field. And these two programs fit that bill. Now, we had a previous amendment from Ms. Woolsey in regards to the EFV program. She laid out the reasons behind that that I don't have to get into. But the fact is, defense spending is the second largest spending category in the entire federal budget after health care costs. And if that is taken off the table, which I hear too often from too many of my colleagues, it's going to make restoring the fiscal health of our nation that much more difficult. And with just the elimination of the Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle, Secretary Gates estimates it could save the American taxpayer over $12 billion. And then for the SLAM-RAM program, General Corelli estimated that would save an additional $1 billion. And when the budget's going to be tight, and there's inevitably going to be an increasing squeeze on our military and military readiness, what better place to start than these weapon programs that the military is not even asking for and instructing Congress, stop the insanity? But I was also proud in the last session of Congress that the Democratic majority moved forward on another important area of defense reform, and that's the weapons procurement program. A recent General Accounting Office report indicates that current weapons programs in the pipeline today are over $300 billion over budget. So this blank check that defense contractors expect from the American taxpayer has got to end, or we will spend ourselves into oblivion, and we won't get a good bang for the taxpayer dollars, and we won't be doing right for the American fighting soldier. So the point of my amendment is simple. It's going to be tough to making the type of budget decisions that we have to make in a bipartisan fashion to get these structural deficits under control. The defense budget should also be fair game for scrutiny and transparency and cost savings. But what better place to start than where our own military leaders are instructing us to go? Weapons programs they don't need will save money, reduce the redundancy, and help deal with the budget deficits that we're facing. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of the time. And the committee will be in order. The committee will be in order. Members and staff are advised to take their conversations off the floor. The committee will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Chairman, I rise to claim time in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman from Florida is recognized.
Madam Chairman, we have a long discussion on the EFV program, and this legislation provides for an agreement that we are just about to reach where it's a win-win situation. Win for the taxpayer. Taxpayer is not going to have to pay $145 million in termination costs. Same money can be used to complete the program. As it stands, the Marine Corps is satisfied with this. I've been discussing with Secretary Gates for quite a long time now. Too often, the military starts a program, great idea, spends a lot of money in the conceptual design, research, and development, only to cancel the program, get nothing for it, and lose the money. Here's a case where we win. We get to use $3 billion has already been spent. We get to take advantage of completing that program with the money that we would pay to terminate the program anyway. Now, SLAM-RAM is basically a similar program, much smaller than the EFV program, but SLAM-RAM is similar. They're just about to complete the development stage and have SLAM-RAM on the shelf in the event they need to go to procurement immediately for an immediate need. So I'm opposed to this amendment. It doesn't do good for the taxpayer or the military. And I want to compliment Mr. Kind because we've had several opportunities to work together with his constituents, wounded constituents, and their families and he's been very, very helpful, and I want to thank him for having worked with us on those issues. And that I'm happy to yield to the distinguished ranking member of the Appropriations Committee and the Defense Appropriations Committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Yielding time?
2 minutes.
2 minutes to the gentleman from Washington.
That's what we agreed to. Okay, that's okay.
Gentleman's recognized.
Yes, I rise in reluctant opposition to this amendment for the same very reason. The Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle is coming to an end. And I agree with the chairman. It makes me cringe that they've spent $3 billion on this. But for an additional $34 million, we can finish the R&D phase of this program. That's what the chairman was talking about. But then we don't have to pay $145 million, as I understand it, in termination cost. So I think it's just wise to get the final research done. So I would reluctantly have to oppose this amendment because it would take away our opportunity to get this better agreement that the chairman's talking about. SLAM-RAM is an AIM-9 missile that is ground-based, and this program is coming to an end. It's being terminated as well, and we support that. But again, I think we should reject the gentleman's amendment, but the outcome of what he is talking about will be achieved in the very near future. And I reserve my time and yield it back to
the balance of his time. The gentleman from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to conclude my statements with this. And I have great respect and admiration for the two gentlemen who have been serving on the Defense Appropriation Committee for years. And I'm not going to stand here and pretend that I know more about the defense budget than these two gentlemen do. I don't. But I do tend to listen carefully to our own military leadership at the Pentagon. And Secretary of Defense Gates said about the Expeditionary Fighting Vehicle that over 2 decades the program is going to consume half of the Marine Corps procurement funds and nearly all of the ground vehicle budget, something they're trying to avoid. And even though Marine Corps Commandant General James Amos has supported the EFV in the past, he has now recognized that this is, and I quote, an onerous fiscal program. So if we can't start here with these programs, where are we going to go in defense for cost savings? And with that, I'd yield the remainder of my time for the gentleman from Massachusetts.
The gentleman from Massachusetts recognized.
As I understand the arguments of the chairman and the ranking member, it is, we're going to get rid of these eventually, but let's not do it too quickly, because we might save money prematurely. I've never heard a weaker defense for continuing to spend money that at some point we're going to stop, so why not stop now? So I think the gentleman from Wisconsin ought to be supported.
I thought we used most of our 5 minutes. I thought he did.
Time is expired. The gentleman from Florida.
I'd like to inquire of the chair how much time I have remaining.
The gentleman from Florida has 2 minutes remaining.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. I will conclude this debate. As the gentleman's time has expired, we conclude the debate that this is probably a very well-intentioned amendment, but it just gets in the way of working out solutions that are a win for the taxpayer and a win for the military. And we should take advantage of every opportunity that we have to save the money for the taxpayer and get them something for it. And that's what this amendment would prevent from happening. We had a lengthy discussion on the EFV earlier in the debate yesterday, and it's just I'm more convinced than ever, as well-intentioned as the amendment might be, it is just not a good idea, and it's not in the best interest of the taxpayer or the military, and I yield back my time.
Yields back the balance of his time, all time having expired. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Wisconsin. Those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to.
Madam Chair, with that I request a recorded vote.
The gentleman requests a recorded vote, and pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Wisconsin will be postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Madam Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk, Amendment 48.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 48, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Polis of Colorado.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This amendment would help increase the ability of the administration to leverage the resources they already have to support expansion and replication of charter schools that have shown to be effective. Basically, this amendment will remove a restriction that prevents a regulation that prevents subgranting and doesn't allow charter schools grants to be done through intermediaries, which are generally venture philanthropy organizations like New Schools Venture Fund and Charter School Growth Network. These organizations have proven that they can help guide charter schools and CMOs, organizations that manage one or two charter schools, and help build them into successful multi-site organizations that support student success. These venture philanthropy organizations use the same model in the nonprofit sense. I want to emphasize they are nonprofits, as venture capital does in the private sector, and support excellence in the charter schools that are part of their portfolio. They encourage rigorous evaluations. They provide strategic guidance through board membership. One of the issues we frequently have with charter schools is lack of quality governance. These intermediaries actually can help establish quality governance, which is such an important determinant of whether a charter school is successful or not. They can provide flexibility to provide specific interventions as needed. When something isn't working, they can help. And it'll empower the administration to help be able to work through venture philanthropy organizations to better leverage federal funds. If you have X dollars in federal funds, they can combine that with 2X or 3X in private philanthropic capital that they've raised to have a more meaningful impact on student achievement, to help expand and replicate what we know works with regard to charter schools. I'd like to yield to the ranking member of the Education Committee.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I thank him for his amendment. I would, however, would hope that he might withdraw this amendment so we would have an opportunity to go through exactly what the thresholds would be for the department to award this right to the grantors to make these sub-grants, because obviously you've been a leader in the effort of improving the quality and the number of charter schools, but this is a $50 million pool of money that could rightfully be used for this purpose. But I think we want to make sure that we have some assurances as to accountability, as to assurance, and the kinds of sub-grants that would be made to expand the university of high-quality, high-performing charter schools. And I thank him for offering this amendment, but I do hope that he would hold. I know that Congressman Klein is also supportive of this amendment, but I think it would be best if we had an opportunity to walk through it and then either approach the department to rewrite the regulation or to have legislation from the committee. So thank you very much for yielding.
I thank the gentleman. I'll look forward to working with the chair and the ranking member to ensure that the administration has all the tools they need to make sure that the limited resources they have for expansion and replication of models that we know work are used in the highest leverage way possible, and I withdraw the amendment.
Without objection, the amendment is withdrawn.
I have an amendment at the desk.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida this rights?
Thank you. To have an amendment at the desk to number
Gentleman
400.
from Kentucky. The amendment proposes to amend portions of the bill already passed in the reading. Does the gentlewoman from Texas seek unanimous consent to offer at this point in the reading? Is there an objection?
I object.
Objection is sustained. For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington
I move to strike the requisite number of words.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
And I'm very sorry that the gentlelady cannot offer her very well thought out amendments on a technicality, but I will yield to her for 3 minutes to explain what her amendments would have done if they had been in order.
Thank you very much. It's unfortunate that Republicans want to issue a point of order. We ask unanimous consent for amendments that have been placed timely into the record against jobs. And that is what my amendment is about. It clearly is about restoring the $5 billion that the Republicans want to take out and block American jobs. You can clearly see how long we've been here, and there have been actually no jobs being created by Republicans. This amendment does simply one thing. It restores the $5 billion in stimulus dollars that have created thousands upon thousands of jobs. It has created this housing for low-income housing is created this kind of map that shows that stimulus jobs have been all over America and created 585,653 jobs, 253,000 projects. This is interesting that our friends can support President Obama on agricultural subsidy, but they can create no jobs, and they want to oppose restoring the $5 billion in stimulus dollars, and I might call them reinvestment dollars. In addition, our friends want to ignore the fact that by closing or taking away $5 billion, they close what we call community health clinics. Yes, this is where Americans are now getting their good health care, on community clinics. And so I would argue that it is a shame that we have a situation where you cannot present this amendment. Jobs, the idea of infrastructure investment, the idea of low-income housing that is being created, and as well projects like housing for the elderly in Minnesota, Kiwanis Village apartments that are in the Washington area, Father Murphy Phase 3, 10 new rental duplexes in Shawnee, Oklahoma, Blackfeet Housing, 223 homes, again in Montana, Mount View Village Lofts, again in Alaska, and of course Peplo Housing in El Paso, Texas. Can you tell me why you want to eliminate the idea and the ability for individuals to work by taking away the monies that have been invested in America? That is what this has done. In Houston alone, CenterPoint has been able to improve their grid to provide more energy for our community. We have gotten $849 million that have put people to work and have provided health care, have improved the environment. I would ask my colleagues to take away the point of order, to not say I'm out of order, so you're putting a point of order on American jobs. And I think it is insane to not be able to allow a member to stand and say that the monies that you're taking away are proven themselves to be monies that have been legitimate and have called upon the American people to rise up and to be employed. There are people who are now at their 99th level of not being able to get employed and get unemployment insurance. They need these jobs. The $5 billion that will be taken away will be impacting projects yet to come that will help rebuild America's infrastructure. So I am just asking, and I thank the gentleman from Washington for allowing this explanation, but I am hopefully will be heard at least by the colleagues and the people of the United States that this amendment, restoring simply $5 billion. There was a second amendment that was going to make the point that we don't want Americans to know how much great work the Recovery Act has done by taking money away for signs that have been put up. I'm willing to withdraw that amendment because $5 billion is $5 billion to put Americans to work. And I am simply appalled at the fact that we don't have the opportunity to share with the American people their tax dollars to make sure that they have the opportunity to work, to have good health care, to have housing, and to have good energy relief, to make sure that our environment is safe and that we expand our independence by having the kind of energy efficiency that seniors are in need. So to the gentleman from Washington, I do want to acknowledge that the Recovery Act monies have been an effective tool for building jobs, and frankly, 1,000 jobs were created in Houston. I'd be happy to yield back to him.
The economists today say that if we had not had stimulus, unemployment would be at 13%. I hear so often over on the other side that it didn't work. I yield one more minute.
All time has expired.
I have 5 minutes.
Does the gentleman move to strike the last word?
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
I yield myself 1 minute. I hear so much talk on the other side that the stimulus program didn't work. Reputable economists say the unemployment rate would be at 12.5% to 13% if we hadn't had the stimulus package. And again, that's why we're so worried about the magnitude of the cuts here having a counter-cyclical effect. So I appreciate the gentlewoman's work on this, and I yield back the balance of my time.
All time has been yielded back. Who seeks recognition? For what purpose does the gentlelady from Tennessee rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise as the designee of Mr. Jordan for Amendment 104.
Clerk will designate.
Amendment number 104, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mrs. Blackburn of Tennessee.
Pursuant to the order of the House of February 17, 2011, the gentlelady from Tennessee, Ms. Blackburn, and a member opposed will each control 15 minutes. Clerk recognizes, or the chair recognizes, the gentlelady from Tennessee.
I thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, the American people spoke loud and clear in November, and they have continued to speak and hold us accountable. Their message is clear. They are overtaxed, this government is overspent, and they have had enough of Washington passing bills, regulations, rules, programs they can't afford and do not want. They have said, stop the out-of-control spending. Washington does not have a revenue problem. Washington has a very serious spending problem. They are ready for us to change the way the system operates. They want the fiscal house in order, and there is a systematic way we can approach this. In the past couple of years, 26 different states have used this method. Indeed, even Tennessee, my state, used it during a time of fiscal crisis. They have replaced billions of dollars in deficit spending and projections with spending cuts, and now it is time for the federal government to follow the states. The Republican Study Committee amendment makes an 11% cut on our legislative branch spending and a 5.5% cut in other non-defense, non-veterans, non-homeland security accounts. This amendment will save $22.2 billion for the balance of this fiscal year and from this year's deficit. I know not everyone is a fan of across-the-board cuts, but many of us are, and so are our constituents. This is a concept that should be implemented at the federal level, and indeed it has been used before. President Roosevelt used it at World War II, and from 1942 to 44 they cut 20%. President Truman with the Korean War, they cut 28% in 1950. It is used, it works, it has a history of working. It is imperative that we get the spending cut, and across the board, spending reductions are a very responsible way for us to do this. I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I reserve the balance of our time.
Gentlelady from Tennessee reserves the balance of her time. The gentleman from Washington.
I rise to seek the time in opposition to this misguided amendment.
The gentleman is recognized.
For 15 minutes?
For 15 minutes.
I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Gentleman's recognized without objection.
Let me remind my colleagues what the underlying CR does to existing programs, even before we consider the additional across-the-board cut offered by Mr. Jordan. A cut of $107 million from food safety inspections. This amendment by Mr. Jordan would take an additional $5.6 million. The CR also already cuts $400 million to the Food and Drug Administration, and this amendment would take an additional $22 million. Cuts to state law enforcement assistance by $1.3 billion, 35% compared to the current rate. The Jordan amendment would cut an additional $68 million. The original version also completely eliminated the COPS hiring program, but an amendment passed by the House this week from our side prevailed, reinstating some of that funding. Cut $661 million below the current rate from the Army Corps of Engineers, leaving hundreds of communities without critical flood control and navigation work. The Jordan Amendment would cut an additional $35 million. The CR also completely eliminates weatherization and state energy programs, cuts $648 million from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Program, increasing the likelihood that bomb-grade material entering the United States. The Jordan Amendment would cut an additional $37 million. The CR cuts safe drinking water and clean water state funds by 56% or $1.7 billion. The Jordan Amendment would cut an additional $167.2 million. The CR cuts the maximum Pell Grant amount by $845, which helps more than 8 million students afford college. The Jordan Amendment exacerbates that reduction by taking an additional $962 million from the program. The CR cuts Head Starts by more than $1.1 billion, which is $500 million below the 2008 level. The Jordan Amendment would cut an additional $338 million, meaning that individual students would lose their right to Head Start, that the teachers would be fired, that people would be unemployed because of this amendment. And the transportation and HUD, which already saw a cut of nearly $14 billion, would be cut by an additional $3.7 billion, impacting critical funding for roads and bridges and infrastructure across this country. This is a meat axe approach on top of a meat axe approach. It's a double meat axe approach. And it is an amendment that we should defeat and defeat soundly, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves the balance of his time. The gentlelady from Tennessee.
I rise to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Walsh.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise today in support of Amendment 104. You know, we've spent the past few days talking about billions here, billions there, real programs, real people, but the American people have got to be shaking their head. We are broke. We are $14 trillion in debt, and we know it's more than that. By 2014, interest on the debt alone will spend more than we will on all non-discretionary spending except for defense. By 2014, every citizen in the United States will spend $2,500 just to pay interest on the debt. I appreciate the leadership the Republican leadership has provided in being as bold as they can be on necessary, important spending cuts. But my colleagues, we've got to have faith in the American people. They are ahead of us on this. They are ready. This is one of those rare moments when the American people are asking us to be bold. They're asking us to go one step further. I've got a brother who's been in the financial service industry for 20 or 30 years. He sent me a text last night and said, keep the cuts coming, baby. The leadership, the lack of leadership the White House is providing on this issue is stunning. You have to lead. The American people are ahead of us to get back to real FY08 spending levels, to actually get $100 billion in cuts. My colleagues, don't be afraid of that. That's what the American people want. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Time's expired. Gentleman from Washington.
Yes, I yield 1 minute to the distinguished chairman of the House Appropriations Committee, Mr. Rogers from Kentucky.
Gentleman from Kentucky is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank the gentleman. I'm in opposition to this amendment, Madam Chairman. The House Republican package that we have before us already represents the largest reduction in discretionary spending in the history of the nation. It's a historic package, much-needed spending cuts, reductions that meets and exceeds the pledge goal of cutting $100 billion. In this package, there's $106 billion in cut spending, including terminating 150 programs. These reductions were tough, they were thoughtful, made by going line by line through the budget and cutting or eliminating programs that don't work or that we can no longer afford by the people who know those programs best. The subcommittee chairs, the staff, and our members working around the clock to make it happen. They did the hard work of getting deep into the weeds, making the best possible choices of exactly where and how to cut these spendings. In contrast, rather than make careful decisions on specific programs, the Jordan Amendment hits everything indiscriminately in a heavy-handed way. We were elected to make choices, not run an automatic pilot.
Gentlelady from me. The committee will rise informally.
House will be in order. The chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate has passed S. 365 to make a technical amendment to the Education Science Reform Act of 2002, in which the concurrence of the House is requested.
Thank you. The committee will resume its sitting.
Gentlelady from Tennessee is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Flake.
Gentleman from Arizona recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. The gentleman before said that these represent, in the base bill, the largest cuts we've ever made. That is true. But we are running the largest deficit we've ever run. We have the largest debt that we've ever had. And what the situation calls for are deeper cuts than are in the underlying bill. If we're really going to get on the right track here, we've got to understand that we have to make unprecedented cuts and to realize that what we're doing here is a rounding error compared to what we're going to have to do with entitlement spending, and that's going to come. But to ensure that we can make those choices when we deal with entitlements, we've got to go deeper than we're going in this base bill. Again, we're running a deficit of $1.5 trillion this year on a debt of $14 trillion. The $100 billion in the base bill is 1/15 of the entire deficit that we're running, just 1/15. That's not enough. We've got to go further. I support the Jordan Amendment. Let's make deeper cuts. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Washington.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Brady, who's been the chair and ranking member of the House Administration Committee.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to speak on this. Madam Chairman, I'm embarrassed to be here. I'm embarrassed to be a member of this House right now. I'm embarrassed that I have to stand up here and fight for the little people that can't fight for themselves. I was here on 9/11. I was in my office, and the police officers came in to get me out of my office. I wanted to stay. They said, no, Congressman, we got to get you out. As he's taking me out, he's going back in. He's putting his life in harm's way and worrying about cutting him. We want to take money from him. It's totally ridiculous. Madam Speaker, we don't want to hurt our little guys and gals. We want to hurt our House staff members. We want to hurt our administrators, our sergeants at arms, our doorkeepers, the ladies in the coat room that take good care of us, all the people, the administrators here. They don't make overtime. They put their time in like we do. We're running 67 hours in this House today. 67 hours. You know, it's costing us $2 million to put this CR on a bridge to nowhere. That's where it's going. And it's a disgrace that we've got to hurt the little people, and I'm not going to let that happen. You hear about yield back. Well, we yield back. We want them to yield back their money. We want them to yield back it to us. They do an excellent job. Madam Speaker, I don't want them to yield back. I'm not going to let them yield back. I'm not even yielding back in now. I'm just done.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentlelady from Tennessee.
Madam Speaker, how much time is remaining on each side?
Gentlelady from Tennessee has 10.5 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Washington has 11 minutes remaining. 11 minutes remaining. Gentlelady from Tennessee.
At this time, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New Hampshire, Mr. Genta.
Gentleman from New Hampshire is recognized for 1 minute. Before the gentleman starts, the committee will be in order. The committee will be in order. Gentleman from New Hampshire.
I thank the gentlelady from Tennessee for yielding her time. Madam Chair, I am not embarrassed to be here, part of this institution. I'm honored. I'm honored to represent New Hampshire in its quest for fiscal discipline, fiscal responsibility, and fiscal restraint. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the precipice of our country in terms of spending. We simply offer an amendment that further reduces the necessary spending restraints our country is demanding. This is about listening to our country, listening to the people who just elected this Congress to restore discipline with respect to our spending recognitions in Washington. Ladies and gentlemen, this amendment, which I'm happy to and honored to co-sponsor, first cuts our own institution. In New Hampshire, I said to the people in New Hampshire, we're going to cut first ourselves before we make other tough cuts in this country. This amendment further reduces our own expenditure. And finally, it takes 5.5% across the board, with a few exceptions, in the 8 non-security divisions of the CR. I support this amendment. I think we've got to get serious about spending in this nation and send a strong message that we are listening to the American people. I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Washington.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished former chairman and ranking member of the THUD subcommittee, Mr. Olver from Massachusetts.
Gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Chairman, this is a thoughtless and destructive amendment. I strongly oppose the underlying bill and believe it profoundly limits the transportation options for Americans and will damage our economy through hundreds of thousands of lost jobs. But I do respect that Chairman Latham provided oversight and made tough decisions on priorities. Unfortunately, the Jordan amendment, after all these days of individually considered amendments, does none of that. It reduces every account by 5.5% without any understanding or probably even concern for the impact. For example, it ensures a part-time air traffic control system by cutting more than more than half a billion from the operating expenses of the FAA. Does the gentleman really intend to close down the Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland airports one day each month? This amendment will result in the funding shortfall of nearly $1 billion in the tenant-based Section 8 program, resulting in the eviction of 120,000
Gentleman's
people.
time's expired. Gentlelady from Tennessee.
Reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Washington.
I yield 1 minute to Mr. Cole from Oklahoma, a valued member of the Interior Appropriations Subcommittee.
Gentleman from Oklahoma is recognized for 1 minute.
This has been a great week for fiscal conservatives. Under Chairman Rogers, the Appropriations Committee, the entire Republican conference, we've actually enacted, or are on the verge of enacting, historic cuts and passing them through this body. And we've let others come and participate with their ideas and their suggestions. My concern is not the amount of money involved in the amendment, it's the method adopted to achieve the savings. Across-the-board cuts essentially mean you lose the ability to eliminate, to root out, and to prioritize. And in fact, you adopt the priorities of the people that wrote the original budget. And with all due respect to my friends on this side, that means we are adopting our friends on this side's priorities when we cut in this manner. So I think we should embrace the spirit behind this amendment. It's well motivated, but reject the method and go back to the thoughtful, targeted, and tough kind of decisions that Chairman Rogers, the Appropriations Committee, and our entire conference and every member has had the opportunity to participate in. With that, I yield back.
Time's expired. Gentlelady from Tennessee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 30 seconds to Mr. Huelskamp from Kansas.
Gentleman's recognized for 30 seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I rise in support of this amendment, and the American people have spoken. They demand that Washington stop its out-of-control spending now, not sometime in the future. And despite what the administration tells you, every last dime in this bill will be borrowed. Every last dime of the $1 trillion will be borrowed. And the cost of this bill alone, will exceed $500 for every single household in America, just for this bill. We have to stop the spending now. We cannot afford it. The massive debt burden on our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren cannot be afforded. I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Washington.
Mr. Bonner from Alabama, a distinguished member of the committee. I yield 1 minute.
Gentleman from Alabama is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman for yielding, and I rise to add my voice in opposition to the amendment offered from my friend from Ohio. I, too, am a member of the RSC, and I think many of the good points that have been made here on the House floor during the last few days can be attributed to the good work and the heartfelt convictions of the members of the Republican Study Committee and its long-standing commitment to freedom and liberty. But I believe this approach taken by this amendment is misguided. Madam Chair, the Appropriations Committee has put before the House a CR that makes significant cuts to all areas of our federal government. But these cuts have been made with deliberate intent and after careful consideration. In other words, they've been done surgically, and I believe this amendment would take a more indiscriminate, hatchet approach. The Republican pledge to America states we will roll back government spending to pre-stimulus, pre-bailout levels, saving us at least $100 billion in the first year alone. But it doesn't say we have to accomplish this task in the first spending bill before us, and it did not envision accomplishing it in the remaining 7 months. I hope we can defeat this amendment.
Gentlelady from Tennessee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I yield 1 minute to Mr. Pence of Indiana.
Gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 1 minute. Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This nation currently faces a $1.65 trillion deficit, $14 trillion national debt. Despite all the talk of the President's so-called fiscal discipline, this administration just proposed a budget that will add $12 trillion to that mountain range of debt facing our children and grandchildren. Fortunately, under the leadership of Chairman Rogers, House Republicans are keeping our word to the American people. We said if you gave us a second chance to lead this Congress, we'd find at least $100 billion in savings this year. And House Republicans will do that before we adjourn for this week. But House Conservatives believe we can do more. I truly believe that the Jordan Amendment, which provides an across-the-board cut of 5.5%, more for the legislative branch, doesn't touch our most cherished ally, Israel, is one of those opportunities where you have a chance to underpromise and overperform. We said to the American people that we'd do at least $100 billion. We've added hundreds of millions of dollars to that. Let's do more. Let's do $22 billion more. Let's underpromise, overdeliver, and set this nation back on a pathway toward fiscal responsibility and reform.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Washington.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished lady from Connecticut, Rosa DeLauro, who is the ranking member on the Labor HHS subcommittee.
Gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized for 1 minute.
If the majority party really wanted to do something about the deficit, they could look to other parts of the budget for significant cuts and savings, instead of coming back over and over again with ever deeper cuts to the programs that make investments in education, in health care, in job training, and in scientific research. Democrats are committed to reducing the deficit. We believe you ought to start by ending the tax subsidies and special interest waste. Let's look at it. $40 billion in oil subsidies, $8 billion in farm subsidies, $7.4 billion that could be saved by shutting down the practice of treaty shopping, $3 billion a year that could be saved if we allow cheaper generic drugs in the market. This across-the-board amendment cut is an example of the majority's reckless rush to slash without regard to the impact on the economy, the businesses that create jobs, or middle-class working people who are doing their best for their families and educating their kids for the future. The majority is hitting families and children and the elderly, and they are not laying a glove on the special interest tax subsidies.
Gentlelady from Tennessee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Barton.
Gentleman from Texas recognized for 1 minute.
Thank the gentlelady. I ask unanimous consent to revise and extend.
Without objection, gentleman's recognized.
Thank you. I rise in strong support of the Jordan Amendment. I'm obviously not a freshman. I've been in the Congress for 26 years. I'm very supportive of what Chairman Rogers and all the appropriators have done. I think it's an interesting point to have the ranking minority member yielding to the chairman of the committee, but that's Congress at its finest. But I would point out that our budget deficit this year is $1.6 trillion. I would point out that the Obama budget, the smallest deficit it reports over a 10-year period, is about $750 billion. The Republican Study Committee under the leadership of Mr. Jordan is the point that is lancing the out-of-control, reckless. This amendment complements what Chairman Rogers has done. We need to support it to put them in the best position when we have the negotiations with our friends in the other body. Please vote for this necessary amendment.
Gentleman from Washington.
I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from California and Notre Dame, Mr. Lundgren, from California, the former Attorney General.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Look, I stand before you as a conservative member of the Republican Study Committee, former chairman of the Republican Study Committee, in strong opposition to this proposal. Across-the-board cuts are a lazy member's way to achieve something. This will cut 11% for the security of the Congress. Since the tragedy in Tucson, I have had innumerable members come to me as the chairman of House Administration and asking me what more we can do for the security of this House, our members and our constituents. There is not a single member of this House who has asked me to cut security. Quite the contrary. This would cut 250 officers. It would not allow me to do the things you have asked me to do in terms of securing your offices here or at home. Secondly, the greatest obligation we have here, I believe, is oversight of the federal government. So what does this amendment do? It cuts us twice as much as those we're supposed to follow. It makes no sense whatsoever. If you want us to do our job and be secure in our job, I would humbly ask you to defeat this amendment.
Gentlelady from Tennessee.
Thank you, Madam